located on the campus of Grant University. And I'm your host, Rick Young. This is another segment of What's in Your Hand. And we got a very special show today. I'm wearing my cap today, Keys to Success, because we're going to get some keys to success. And I'm going to do a short intro. My guest is the author of Leading from the Inside Out, and he's a leadership expert. And he's going to bring the heat. How you doing, Mario?
I am doing great. I'm doing great. And Rick, and you?
I'm doing very good. Do a brief introduction of yourself to let people know who you are and what you do.
Well, so my name is Dr. Mario Barrett. As you said, I hate to use the term, but it is what it is. I am an expert in leadership. I have studied leadership development, organizational change for over a decade. Got my PhD in leadership and organizational change. I've worked in several Fortune 100 organizations. Have also served in the United States Air Force during the Gulf War. Started my own consulting company, the Barrett Center for Leadership Development, that helps small to medium-sized organizations develop their leadership within, as well as organizational strategy. I am a best-selling author of my book, Leading from the Inside Out, and the companion workbook, 11 leadership practices that will change your life. And I'm also a full-time professor and dean at the Jack Welch Management Institute, where again, I teach leadership, and I also help to lead the faculty that helps students move towards getting their MBA with a concentration in leadership development.
And just give us a reminder of who Jack Welch was. I know who he is, but can you talk about a little bit about Jack Welch?
So Jack Welch unfortunately passed about a year or so ago. But Jack Welch at one point in time was the preeminent organizational leader. So right now we think of Elon Musk, we've thought of the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gates. Before them, it was Jack Welch. He was the leader of General Electric, and he took General Electric to prominence, where it became the number one company in the world. And you can see the remnants of General Electric, NBC, the creation of CNBC, MSNBC, all of that was under Jack's leadership. But there are so many leaders that we now have in American Fortune 500 companies that when they were coming up through the executive ranks, they studied Jack Welch in terms of how to be a leader and lead an organization. And so his legacy lives on in those leaders and those individuals that they lead and develop. And again, it also lives on with all of the students that are coming through the Jack Welch Management Institute and learning, his philosophy on leading an organization.
Oh, man. Listen, we need to take a look at, since we talk about studying people, we need to take a look at studying my engineer, Doug Frazier, as far as leadership. As far as leadership is concerned, we need to take a look at him. Right, Doug? Mr. Frazier got quiet on me.
I'm not part of the interview.
I can't hear you.
I'm not part of the interview.
I want people to know about your leadership skills. Is that a secret?
Doc, he's talking to the doc. He's doing a pretty good job.
Oh man.
Well,
so,
go ahead, Rick. I was just gonna say to the point that you were making, everybody, and I do mean everybody, has leadership abilities and skills and talents within them. It's just a matter of having that right spark or that motivation for you to unleash that leadership within you. You know, I can remember back, you know, a few years ago, unfortunately, in the African American community, we've had a number of African Americans, killed at the hands of the police. And there's been a club of African American women that, until their children were caught up in gun violence, they were just moms, right? They were just
Right.
moms. And once their children got caught up in the violence, the gun violence, all of a sudden things changed. And they became leaders in a movement against gun violence. It's the same thing with
Right.
MAD. I don't know if you remember MAD, Mothers Against
Against
Drunk Driving.
drivers.
Exactly. That was created by a mother who lost her child to a drunk driver. Prior to that incident occurring, she was just a regular, everyday mother. And a situation that tapped into her leadership allowed her to really start to take hold and create a whole movement that not only, yes, it brought national attention, and they created laws around this. So, you know, when people say, you know, that person right there looks like a leader or has leadership abilities or skills or talents, and that person doesn't. No, every single person does. The question is, are you around the right motivation that's going to spark your leadership to action?
Okay, that's wonderful. So just for your information, you said, oh, go ahead, Rick, but you have to keep in mind that this is your show. If you remember, if you remember, the name of this program is called What's in Your Hand. It doesn't say what's in my hand. It says what's in your hand. So we're trying to find out what's in your hand.
Got it.
This is your show right now.
Got it.
But you know, the thing about leadership is definitely set off a spark in me, man, because you said everybody has leadership within them because they have to lead themselves, right?
Yes.
I'm going right to the bread and butter, man. I'm going right to the bread and butter.
Go ahead.
I'm going right to the bread and the butter. I'm going right to the core. I want to start with servant leadership. What is servant leadership?
So years ago, there was an individual, his name was Robert Greenleaf. And what he did was he really popularized the term servant leadership. Now, I will make the argument, and it's not a hard argument to make, that servant leadership has been around forever. Forever. The beginning of time, it's been around. And, you know, not to get too biblical, but Jesus Christ was a servant leader. At the end of the day, the whole purpose of leading for the benefit of those that you lead is at the core of servant leadership. It's not about leading for your own benefit or what you're going to get out of it. It's about leading for the benefit of those that you lead, wanting the best and wanting to serve those that you lead. Think of, for those of you out there that are parents, hopefully you are all servant leaders. Hopefully. Because at the end of the day, you lead your children not for your own benefit, but for theirs. And that may mean sometimes, you know, having to be the bad guy or the bad gal at the moment, because you're instilling some discipline that's going to benefit them in the long run. Even though in the moment, it would be much easier for you to just give in and be the nice person. But think, are you leading your child to prosperity, or are you helping to lead them to their demise? And so that's leadership. It shows up everywhere where we are. Everywhere where we are. It can show up in an organization. It can show up in your community. It can show up in your family. But first and foremost, it has to show up in your life for you to lead yourself so that you can effectively lead others. But at the core of servant leadership is all about leading others for their benefit and not necessarily for your own.
Why was John Williams so successful with UCLA? Now we know he had Lou Alcindor, and we know he had Bill Walton, big 7-footers. But still in all, I mean, no one won more championships in NCAA championship than John Wooden. He just owned it. Why was he so
Right.
successful with his leadership skills? I think he even wrote a book on leadership as well.
Yes, he did. And I'll tell you what you find with John Wooden, you find with the Tom Brady's, and I know I'm in New York City, so there are a lot of Jet haters on Tom Brady, but
Yeah, you just lost Doug right there. You just lost Frazier. You just lost him. Just lost him. He was going good until you said that.
But you have to respect, okay? You have to respect the fact that a Tom Brady or John Wooden, what these individuals were able to do was develop powerful relationships with the individuals on their teams. And leadership, when you boil it down to, right, it's hard to lead people effectively if you're keeping them at arm's length. It's hard to lead people effectively when you don't know what it is that they want out of the relationship. It's hard to lead people effectively when you have this vision or mission in terms of where you want to take the team or the organization or your family or the community, but in the same breath, you're not enrolling those individuals on your team to help them see themselves inside of the mission, to help them see themselves inside of the vision. How do you inspire them if, again, you don't form those relationships? And so when you look at John Wooden, and I've heard Kareem Abdul-Jabbar speak about John Wooden present day and said that what really made John Wooden different was that John Wooden cared about the whole being of Lou Alcindor, not just a basketball player, Lou Alcindor. And when people feel as though you're there, again, we're going back to that servant leadership. When people feel that you're there for them and for their growth and their development and their holistic being, you would be so surprised how much they will run through walls for you. And going back to the Tom Brady, you look at every team member, aside from Antonio Brown, but every team member that he's had, no one has had a bad thing to say about him. And people come out of retirement to play with Tom Brady. Gronk came out of retirement to play with him. People loved this man because at the end of the day, he valued them as a whole, brought them within the team and within the vision and said, okay, I know what you need to be successful. I'm going to help you be successful as we collectively become a success. You don't do what these two have done and won as much as they won by accident or by mistake or simply by talent. There are a lot of other individuals that we could speak about talent, for example, with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Very talented, probably more talented than Tom Brady. But it feels like, right, every other season there's some drama. There's some issues. He just lost his top wide receiver. When would you see that with Tom Brady? I don't think you would. Leaders bring a level of serenity, peace, and calm, even when there's a tremendous amount of turmoil going on outside. And at the core of it is because they create a safe environment, understanding what you need in the relationship and what they need.
Well, just for your information, my niece is watching this program live. So that means a couple of things. One, I have to behave myself, make sure of that's number one. And number two, she is a leader because she's leading some young, I don't know the age of the group that she works with, but she's leading young children. And I want you to say something to her because she's got some kind of gift. I'm not exactly sure how to put my hand on it, but she's very gifted. She just knows how to do things. She just knows how to make things happen. She's just creative and she can just do things. Can you say something to her about her leadership role? Because she's listening right now, so you might as well make it personal.
Well, what I would say is this,
her name is Ashanti. Her name is Ashanti.
Ashanti?
I call her Ashanti Warrior.
All right. So what I would say to you, Ashanti, is that you're doing something that's really, really tremendous inside of leading children. And when you lead children, you have the ability to shift how the world functions going forward. That is probably one of the most important things that you can do, is be able to really help to lead children. Because let me be, totally candid in saying, I will work with anyone to try to help them become the best leader that they can be. But the older you are, the harder it is, because you've kind of gotten set into your ways, you've gotten habits, you've formed beliefs, whether rightly or wrongly, and all of that kind of helps to shape your life. And so unless you're someone that's totally open-minded, it becomes more difficult the more set in your ways you are with those beliefs, the older you are. Children, totally different. Children are young. They're not as set in their ways because they haven't been around long enough. They haven't been able to create these either correct perceptions or false narratives. And so, Ashanti, as far as you being able to help shape and mold, you have a tremendous amount of power as well as responsibility. And when you look at these young people that you're shaping, you really want to shape inside of the future that you want to see for the world, because again, you do have that power. And as a professor myself, one of the great things that I take pride in with each and every one of my business students is that I know, based on how I teach them about leadership, that's going to shift how they go back into their organizations and treat their team members and treat individuals that they lead in their departments. So what I do has a ripple effect far larger than that one student. Same thing with you as well, Ashanti. When you deal with each one of these young people, understand you don't know how many lives they're going to touch based on your ability to lead and touch their life. So just to understand that you have tremendous power and influence, but also great responsibility. And what you're doing is a great thing, but always do it inside of what you want to see for the world, not necessarily what you see in the world today, because we can change the world. And the young people really are the way to go about doing so. So kudos to you. That's a big thing that you're doing for not just the young people, but again, for society in general.
Hey Mario, what if there's an Oprah Winfrey in her classroom? What if there's a President Barack Obama in her classroom right now? We don't know that, because when Oprah was in school, little girl in school, they didn't know she was going to be Oprah Winfrey, billionaire, TV mogul, magnate. Little Barack Obama, regular kid, they didn't know he was going to be president of the United States. Even when he was going to Columbia University, regular kid walking around buses and trains like everybody else. This guy became the president of the United States. So she don't know what one of them kids could be the same.
Well, what I would say is, Ashanti, live as though you do have the next Oprah in your class.
Whoa.
Live as though you do have the next Barack Obama. That's what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is the influence and the responsibility.
That is huge.
That's how I take it.
Yo, Doug, this radio program just made a turn for greatness, man. What's happening today just made a big turn. I mean, we was doing good work, but like this today is like on a whole nother level, man. Wow. Fraser, are you ready for this, Fraser? Fraser's the engineer, the great. He's a former NBA Rucker All-Star.
All right. I can never play basketball.
50 points a game and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So look what he did. He was a basketball player, and now he's doing this kind of work. He's able to engineer and put this together. So, I mean, that says a lot about a human being, right? And what's possible.
It does. Anything's possible. And that's the thing. Anything is possible. Anything.
And now, would you consider this leadership? I grew up in the projects, in the housing development in Harlem.
Yep.
This guy built a studio in the projects where I grew up at. But not only that, they got a few other ones out. There's about 4 or 5 of them. I don't know how many they got exactly. He could tell you, but they got a couple of them that they built. Guy was a basketball player.
Of course, that's leadership.
You know, and he'll tell you in a minute, and he'll tell you he did time too. He'll tell you that. He was in the big house. He'll tell you that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
let me just say this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just say this. Malcolm X was in a big house, and he's one of the greatest black leaders ever. Right. So let's just
Mandela was in the big house.
King was in a big house. So I mean, at the end of the day, that to me is, it's not about the challenges. It's not about the challenges necessarily in your life. It's about how you've overcome the challenges in your life, right? That's one. Two, leadership. When you go from creating something from nothing, that is one of the hardest things to do. What is one of the hardest things to do in America? Starting a business. Why is that? Because you're trying to create something from nothing. And the world is almost always against you when you're trying to create something from nothing. You're going to run into a ton of challenges. You're going to learn things that you didn't know. You're going to have pitfalls. You're going to have mistakes that happen. And the question is, this goes back to leading yourself first. Who are you going to be in the moment? Are you going to be the person that gets stopped? Because that's where most people find themselves. They get stopped. And so they never create that studio. They never create that business. Or are you going to be the person that when things pop off, that makes you stumble a little bit, that makes you question yourself a little bit? Are you going to dig deep? Are you going to dig deep and say, you know what? No. Let me find another way. No. Let me ask for some help. No. Let me navigate this. And then work towards completing the mission, right? The leaders are always working to complete the mission, complete the vision. It's not like Steve Jobs just woke up one morning and said, you know what, I'm going to create Apple, and boop, there it is. It's not like Jeff Bezos woke up one morning and said, I'm going to create Apple, and boop, there it is. That's not how the world works. They got to fight.
Amazon.
They got to push. I'm sorry, Amazon. They got to push. They got to push. They got to push. So whether you're creating Amazon or Apple, or you're creating a studio, or you wrote a book, or you're influencing the life of one that grows up to be Oprah Winfrey or Barack Obama, that's all leadership. It's all leadership.
But just keep it, Jeff Bezos was only shipping books online. That's how he started. He was doing the packing. He was like one of the packers in the beginning, early in the game. Shipping books. Now he sells everything.
Everything.
You get anything from Amazon. We started off shipping books.
Yep. Funny enough, you say that. A lot of our younger viewers, they don't know that. They think that Amazon has been selling everything. I remember when Amazon first started to challenge Barnes and Nobles, and I didn't think much of it. I thought, okay, this is a great book selling company. Who knew, right? Who knew it would become this?
Yeah. They knocked out Borders. They knocked them out the box. Bam, see you later. Bye. And Barnes and Nobles is like on the ropes with their brick and mortar store. They're on the ropes right now. They done closed many of their locations. Yes. I was a fan of Barnes and Nobles.
Me too. I was as well. If you love reading, I don't see how you couldn't be. And this is a key point too. This is a key point too. I just want to plug this, especially since we got Ashanti on the phone and she deals with the young people. Leaders are readers. Always.
I was just thinking that. That just came in my mind. Wow. I was just thinking that. Man.
You can never stop learning as a leader. Never. Wow. Because there's always someone else that's coming up that wants to take your spot, that wants to knock your company out of position, that wants to, knock you off the radio, whatever it is. And so you always want to be learning to be ahead of the competition, understand your environment, understand the challenges in your environment. You always want to be reading and you always want to be learning.
This guy, Jeff Olson, wrote a book called The Slight Edge. And he says, just read 10 pages a day. 10 pages a day, The Slight Edge, 10 pages a day. And if you read 10 pages a day in a year, That's a substantial amount of reading.
Yes.
Just 10 pages a day. And
Mhm.
so that makes a lot of sense. You know, for people that,
Totally.
cause some people just don't like to read. But sometimes to go to that next level, sometimes you got to, here, we would say to this. Some people do what they want to do,
Mhm.
but the real champions do what they have to do.
Yes.
What do you say to that?
Well, you know this, right? I mean, as a boxer, I'm sure there were days that you did not feel like training, you did not feel like
Yeah.
running, you did not
Yeah.
feel like doing it, and you got
Right.
up and you did it anyway, right?
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is just the way that it is. You have to, like
Yeah.
I said, dig deep, develop that level of resiliency, develop that level of grit, and be able to just outwork people, outwork your competition, and sometimes outwork yourself because yourself doesn't want to do it that day. And so, yes, I'm a big believer in the fact that, you know, some days as a leader, you got to get up and do it, even though you don't want to do it that day.
Yeah.
But if
And
not,
you know,
go ahead.
the funny thing about it, the days when I didn't want to go, sometimes it wound up being my best days.
Yes.
Go figure.
Yes. Yes.
Like everything was clicking. I didn't want to go, but things were clicking that day. I had my best workout, best boxing, sparring. Everything was great that day. I remember some days I felt great and didn't always, you know, wasn't always that great. When I was feeling great, but sometimes when I was feeling like I didn't want to go and I went, you know. And a lot of times I didn't want to go. So I just said I didn't want to go someplace, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna go. And I went, and it was great. I just recently got an award. And I was like, oh man, I was tired. I just came from the gym. I was like, man, I forced myself to go, and it was great. Met some wonderful people, man.
Good. Met
some wonderful people. Met a guy that got a big old studio, like what's the guy in Atlanta that got the big studio down there? Tyler Perry.
Oh, Tyler Perry.
He got a studio in Pennsylvania. Maybe not as big as Tyler's, but he's got a studio, like a whole compound in Pennsylvania. Studio. That I met. Had I not gone, I wouldn't have met.
Right.
So
yeah.
Now, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, you name those guys, Muhammad Ali, they all had coaches. How important is it for a leader to have a coach?
You know, it's funny, and I'm gonna go back to Ashanti with this one as well. One of the things that I see in today's world, in the Black community in particular, that troubles me, is that I see social media has taken over, and social media has almost replaced the voice of reason for young people listening to their elders.
Wow.
And that to me is putting us in a really dangerous place. Because social media is driven by profit. And so it has its own agenda. Whereas, you know, the leaders in your family, the leaders in your communities, again, they're serving you out of servant leadership. They want the best for you. And so what I'm hearing from a lot of people is everybody, you know, they're looking on social media. I want to get rich overnight. I'm going to do Bitcoin. I'm going to do this. I'm going to gamble now with, you know, with betting on sports. And I'm going to do all of these things. And I'm not hearing enough young people listening to their elders as saying, hey, you know, you need to go to school. Hey, you need to carry yourself in a way to where people don't just dismiss you. You know, when you walk into a room, people want to know who you are because of how you carry yourself. You know, that the funny thing that you talk about when you talk about reading, one of the funniest things about when you learn how to read and you read often is all of a sudden your vocabulary expands. All of a sudden your diction improves. All of a sudden your ability to pronounce words improves. And then you go walk into a room, you have more ideas. You have deeper understandings of topics and theories. So now you walk into a room and you hold that space. You talk about Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali had a way with words, as they say. Malcolm X had a way with words, as they say. Dr. King had a way with words, as they say. These are not people that did not read. These are not people that did not have mentors. Mentors, coaches, same thing. Same thing. You need it. Don't just say, I'm going to turn to the YouTube algorithm and learn how to be a millionaire overnight. You might find some good mentors that may tell you some really great things. But look for some real people in your life that are doing what you want to do, that are where you want to be. Find a way to meet them and find a way to add some value to their life to where it becomes reciprocal, where they want to add value to yours. And the value that they'll add to yours is knowledge, and knowledge is power.
Amen.
Okay. I'm going to introduce a new term right now, here today. What's the day? March 20th, 2022. You heard it here first. I'm going to introduce a new term today. How do you become a HVHB? You know what that is? HVHB.
You tell me. What does that mean?
A high valued human being.
Ah, wow. Wow. You know, again, being a high value human being is really a person that adds positive value to someone else's life. Period. It's funny, I was just talking to my brother about this yesterday, and I was saying to my brother, I don't really know when I started to really acknowledge it, but I know I started to acknowledge it a while ago. But the ability for me to do things for others and know that what I did for someone else made a significant difference in their life for the better, that means the world to me. That means I can tell you this, Rick, every term, you know, we hear from our students at the end of the term about what they've learned, how they've grown, how they've taken what they've learned and applied it in their organizations and in their careers. And you hear about all of these wins that they're getting, and then they're getting promotions, and that they're getting raises, and that they're starting their own companies. That's what I'm there for. That's why I'm here. That's right. What else am I here? What else am I on this earth to do? Other than to add value to somebody else's life.
Right.
That's it.
Right. And that's what Ashanti's doing, right? She's adding value.
That's exactly. You're doing the same thing by bringing these conversations to the people. You're adding value to their life as well. And hopefully they take what they're hearing today and they add value to someone else's life. If each one does that to someone else, man, can we solve a lot of problems?
Okay, what is the first step to becoming a high valued human being? What's the first step?
The first step?
Yeah.
Is loving other people. That's the first step. Loving other people and acknowledging their importance. I go back to what I said earlier to you about social media. I think social media has created a space to where we can get behind a keyboard and we can get behind a screen and we could vilify people that don't think like us. We could vilify people that don't look like us. We can demonize people that we don't agree with their opinions. And it's real easy to do. It's really, really easy to be nasty and demean others through social media. We see it every day. When you sit down, right? This is something that I coach some of my faculty members on because I teach in an online environment. And in an online environment, the message can get lost sometimes. You give a student a grade that they're not happy with, all of a sudden you're the worst professor ever in the world. And now they want to fight, right? And sometimes faculty members will get into a back and forth email exchange. And I say, you only go through an email exchange one time. And after you go through that email exchange once and you see that that student is not getting it, pick up the phone and call them. And when you pick up the phone and you call, all of a sudden, all of that hostility starts to melt away because they realize that they're now communicating verbally with another human being on the other line that has a soul and that has feelings. It's funny when you acknowledge the humanity of another person, how your interaction with that person changes. And remember what I said earlier about Tom Brady and John Wooden. Leadership at its core is all about relationships. But you have to value the other person before you can lead the other person. If you don't value the other person, to hell with them. You do what you want. You don't care. And I see a little bit too much of that in our society because I think social media has allowed us to detach ourselves from one another a bit, reducing our ability to form meaningful relationships with one another.
Yeah. I think Tom Brady is somebody that needed to be taken a look at because, you know, from what I understand, he was picked like 180 something people was picked in front of him. That's number one.
Yes.
He was a skinny, gangly kid.
Yes.
One day I was in the gym. I never liked Tom Brady. You know, he's with the New England Patriots. I never liked Tom Brady. One day I was in the gym and I was thinking, now the great ones, Terry Bradshaw, Joe Montana, they got 4 Super Bowls, wins. They're like the top of the line, right? The best ever, right? So wait a minute. This guy got 7? I said, wait a minute. I said, I got to pay attention to this guy. I got to look at this guy different. I started taking a look at him, and, you know, what he's done is amazing. And the guy that was the quarterback in front of him got hurt and never got a job back. When Tom Brady came in, he took the team all the way to the Super Bowl and they won, but the guy never got his job back.
Drew Bledsoe, nope, never did.
And Tom, check that out. That's deep. You know, can't argue with that. I mean, he stepped in there and my man never got his job back.
Rick, think about it this way, Rick. Think about it this way. A lot of times you'll hear in sports, for example, and for those of you that are not affiliated with sports, you've seen it in your own careers. But you'll hear in sports, they'll say that quarterback or that player or that coach lost the team, lost the locker room. In your careers, you'll hear nobody respects that manager. Nobody likes that manager. There's high employee turnover. Everybody wants off his or her team. That again speaks to leadership.
Right. Okay.
It speaks to relationships.
Yeah.
If you have a great manager, I've seen this in my career. A great manager leaves a department, the whole team wants to go and follow that manager to the new department. That manager leaves the company, everybody wants to find out where that manager went, that new company, because they want to follow the manager. Leadership matters far more than we give it credit for. What we think leadership is, which is the problem again, is that we think leadership is a title. We think leadership is a role. Oh, well, that person's the boss, so they're a great leader. No, they have the title of boss, but you can have the title of boss and not be a great leader. And if you have the title of boss and you're not a great leader, you won't have the title of boss too long. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Now, you know, you talked about the problem that one of the issues is that there are many people walking around these streets all over the world that's got some serious mental health issues.
Yes.
Some that you can see, you can look and say, oh, you can see that person has some issues. But some you can't see. They look normal. They go to work every day. But a lot of people have mental health issues.
Yes.
And it's not being dealt with. It's not being addressed. And then on top of that, the pandemic on top of that.
Right.
So what happens in a case like that?
You know, that gets, I think, into politics. And again, if politics is not leadership, then I don't know what it is. There's remember when I said to you that for you to be a great leader, you have to love your fellow man and woman, right? You have to see the humanity in others. It's interesting how when you see someone that has mental illness, that somebody that is not a close friend or not a family member, you can dismiss them. But if it's somebody, if it's your mother, or if it's your brother, or if it's your best friend, it's a whole different story, right? Because you care about that person, because you have a relationship with that person. The question is, as a society, who do we choose to value and who do we choose to throw away? And again, the more distant we become, the easier it is to throw away people that are not in our immediate circle. Again, I teach in an online environment. And what does that mean? I don't have the ability to see my students 3 days a week and foster more of an interpersonal relationship that way. But I don't care any less for my students in an online environment than if I was teaching in a brick and mortar environment.
Okay.
So the question is, as a society, are we going to care about our fellow brothers and sisters, or are we not? And that's a choice each individual has to make. And as individuals start to make those choices, then we start to put politicians in office that are going to make choices that are going to provide better resources for those of us that are walking around with some of these mental illnesses and mental challenges.
Right, because a lot of people, it comes down to also how they feel about themselves, because sometimes how they treat other people.
Yes, always.
Is a
reflection.
Can say a lot about how they feel. Yeah, it's a reflection on how they see themselves.
Yes.
So, and sometimes people got issues that might have happened when they was young. We don't know about. Why is a person exploding? With something so simple and so. And what about emotions? What about, I don't know if we talked about this last time, how to discipline your emotions. That's not easy.
So yeah, we did touch on it last time. We spoke about, there's a theorist, his name is Daniel Goleman, and he really popularized the term emotional intelligence. And inside of emotional intelligence, he broke it down into several components. Two of the most important component, well, I'll give you the 3 most important components. The first is self-awareness. Really being aware of how you show up in a room and how you influence that room. A lot of people lack self-awareness. So they show up in a room and all of a sudden it's chaos, and they think it's the room that's chaotic, but every room they go into shortly after they get there becomes chaotic. So no, you're bringing the chaos with you. So you lack self-awareness not to know that. So self-awareness is being able to understand who you are, how you show up, and how you influence others around you. Extremely important. Then you talk about self-motivation. It's one thing to be motivated by others, but the truly successful individuals in this world are self-motivated. They again, like we spoke about while you getting up and training, they pick themselves up and say, I got to get in the gym today. I don't feel like it, but I got to do it. So self-motivation. But probably the most important one is what I was just alluding to earlier, empathy. Empathy means the ability to intellectually, right, walk in someone else's shoes. I'm a rich guy, right? And if I'm a rich guy, can I understand the plight of the poor? If I understand the plight of the poor, I can have some compassion. Inside of that compassion, I can do some things to help the poor. But if I'm a rich guy and I have no empathy for the poor, I don't care how the poor are struggling. I'm gonna vote against everything that will help poor people. I'm not gonna donate to the homeless shelter. Why? I don't care. I'm good. They need to find out a way to get good. Empathy is key.
There was a big controversy about Kim Kardashian made a statement about women need to work harder. And there was a lot of people gave her like a lot of feedback on, like negative feedback on that. What's your thoughts on that?
I
don't want to get you in trouble now.
No, not at all. But I would say this. I go back to the whole piece about the role that social media is playing in our society.
Mhm.
I don't look to Kim Kardashian to set policy. I don't look to Kim Kardashian for advice. And I get it that there are a lot of young women that do. They look up to Kim Kardashian. What I would like to challenge people in our communities is, again, to start creating some fundamental relationships with our young people to where, okay, they can hear what Kim Kardashian has to say, but they also hear what you have to say. Because
Right.
you're
Okay.
a real person. You're a real person living the life that they're living. Kim Kardashian is somewhere out there in the ethos living a life that's totally different from what they're living. Who should they be listening to? You. You care about them. Kim Kardashian just looks at them as, you know what? You're another follower. And that's going to help me make more money.
Mhm.
I believe, again, social media, the voice is just so loud that it's drowning out a lot of the people in our communities that really care. And a lot of people in our communities that really care are just kind of zoning out and saying, you know what? I can't compete with the iPhone. The iPhone is on my kid's hip 24 hours a day. Now, what I will say to your point in terms of what Kim said is that, listen, we all need to work harder. How about that? It's not any one race. It's not any one gender. We all need to work harder. We all need to work smarter. We all need to
Right.
push. Tom Brady just retired. Retired for what? About 2 months? And he's rich. And his wife is richer than him. But for the love of the game, he said, you know what? I got to come back.
He's coming back?
He's coming back.
Wow.
If he can come back for the love of the game, why can't we go hard to fulfill our dreams until our dreams are fulfilled? Go hard.
Yeah. That was a song. Go hard. That was a song.
That was a song.
Yeah.
Hey,
So
listen,
we pretty much at the end, we don't want to give them all one day. So give them a reason to come back to listen on the next time. But let me just ask you this last question.
Sure.
The Carolyn Dweck, she wrote a book about mindset. And she said there's
Yes.
a growth mindset and there's a fixed mindset.
Yes.
Can you break down the difference between the growth mindset and the fixed mindset? Because I see a lot of people with fixed mindsets.
Yes. So the fixed mindset has a lot of conversations with it. And do understand when I say the mindset, understand that the biggest critic you're ever going to have is you. And that's why the first person that you need to learn how to lead is you. And so you're going to have that inside voice. No, I can't do it. Am I good enough? It's always been done this way. They won't see me as a true leader. I don't think I have enough talent. Those are conversations that you have with yourself, and we all have them from time to time. That's inside of the fixed mindset. Now, the growth mindset says, I am good enough. The growth mindset says, I am going to work hard enough. The growth mindset says, if they don't like me, so what? I'm going to do it anyway. The growth mindset is the mindset that pushes past all of the fears that we have in the fixed mindset. And going back to Ashanti from earlier, and what you said, Rick, was that most of the problems, and I say this to people all the time, adults are tall children. Might sound crazy, but it's true. And the older I get, the more I realize adults are just tall children.
You're tuned in to GHCR.NYC, Grant House's Community Radio, home of the community news and the soul of the Upper West Side.
Put a frog in boiling water and it'll jump out. But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up, that frog will boil. As a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans, it's a story that rings true. We learn to endure the heat in silence. We apply what we learn to life, the bills, the job, the family, things we're expected to handle with ease. When life heats up around us, we just try to stay afloat. We let the water boil. Reaching out isn't easy, but you've never been interested in easy. You joined because you were not afraid of hard work. You are not a frog. If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait until the water boils. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach. That's va.gov/reach. Brought to you by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and the Ad Council.
Yeah, that was almost like we were talking about. You put the frog
Exactly.
in cool water and then turn it up. Eventually, you get him. But if it's hot already, he's going to jump out. So it's almost like what we've been saying.
Yep.
In a sense.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
Growth mindset, fixed mindset. We got to get you back, man, because this information was. But are you finished with your point?
I would just so the last point that I would make on the growth mindset is the fixed mindset is always there. It's always there, and oftentimes what you'll find with the fixed mindset, it is based on how we were raised, right? It's based on the challenges, and it's based on what we saw in our youth during our formative minds, when our minds were forming, that we had all of these limiting beliefs. And the growth mindset is what we have to use to push through. I'll tell you one quick story now, and then I'll let you wrap it up there if you don't mind.
We got time.
There's a really great book out there, and it's called The 4 Agreements by Miguel Ruiz. Really great book.
Okay.
You're right. Good, great book. And in the book, there's a story where there is a single mother who's working really hard every day, and she has maybe a 13-year-old daughter. And one day she comes home from work, and it was a really, really hard day at work. But her daughter would always, be humming and singing as she's doing her homework, and the day is winding down. And the mother comes in and she's frustrated, and she barks at her daughter and says, "Stop that noise. I don't know who told you could sing anyway." Real flippant comment that the mother never even thought about, because she was just kind of reacting. We go back to what we were talking about earlier, Rick, emotional intelligence. That right there is a lack of self-regulation on the mother, the inability to regulate her anger and manage her anger. She took it out on her daughter. And from that moment on, she never heard her daughter sing in the house again. That type of thing, you may not think of it as a big deal when you're a kid, but it carries over into your adulthood. Carries over. Your mother, your father calls you stupid. They might just be upset with you, but you might take it as a 10-year-old, I'm really stupid. And then you start to live that out. And now you're an adult and you think you're stupid when you were never stupid. So adults are told children, and a lot of times in our adult lives, we're trying to fix some of those incidents that occurred when we were children as we were adults. And that's why so many people go to see therapists every week, every month, to try to fix those issues, those childhood issues. The growth mindset is one of the ways to really try to work beyond that, because it's those issues that really attributed to the fixed mindset.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people calling their kids bad. Or he or she's bad. He's bad. She's bad. I hear parents saying that a lot about their children.
And it's not true. It's really not true. Some people would have said, just for the listeners, when I grew up Section 8 housing. My mother, God rest her soul, my mother passed away, Section 8 housing. And I got into a little bit of trouble here and there. It's kind of what happened. Was I a bad kid, or was it the environment that I was in that made it really easy for me to do some bad things? Because if you took me out of that environment and you had me growing up in the suburbs with parents that had resources, would I have any time to do any bad things, really? Probably not. So is it that the kid, that you go back to that whole thing, nature versus nurture. I think both play a role, but I think that nature has a larger role to play, you know, than how you were. I'm not nature. I mean, nurture has a larger role to play than nature. I don't think it's our nature. There are some people that are, yeah, they're just bad people, but that's a very, very small and slim portion of our society. Very small.
Now, some people, you could take them out the projects, but sometimes it's a little bit harder to take the projects out of them.
Well, if you remember what I said, though, the longer you're immersed in a given situation, the more it becomes part of your DNA, right?
Okay.
And so I would say if you get one of these young kids that, you know, that Ashanti is working with, and let's say, quote unquote, they're bad, they're 10 years old and they're bad, and you take that 10-year-old out of that environment and you put that 10-year-old in a resource-rich environment, that kid with a loving environment will shift over time. Now,
Okay.
if you take someone out of that quote unquote bad environment, they've been, you know, in and out of prison, getting in a lot of trouble, and they're 50 years old, and you put them into a resource-rich environment, it's a lot harder for them to make that shift or change because their DNA has just been immersed in a certain environment for just so long that to make that shift is a lot harder. Not to say it's impossible, but it's a lot harder.
All right. Well, leading from the inside out, how can people contact you?
So again, you heard me rant against social media, so I'm not really big on social media, but you can find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Mario O'Barrett. And for those of you that do connect with me on LinkedIn, what you will find is that I try my best to give inspiring messages and articles that I send out every day to my followers. Again, not for my development, for their development and for the betterment of our community and our society.
All right. Well, listen, I want to thank you, man. I want to really thank you for coming today and sharing this information. It's been great. Some really powerful information. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. And I appreciate what you're doing, Rick, because I think it's going to make a difference for those that not only hear the message, but actually internalize it and then utilize it.
Right. And a shout out to Doug Fraser, engineer, and a shout out to Ashanti
Doug.
Warrior.
Shout out Ashanti. Keep doing what you're
Ashanti
doing.
Warrior. She's a warrior. Ashanti Warrior.
She is
All
a
right,
warrior.
brother. I'll talk to you soon and continue blessings.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Rick. You have a great one, everyone.
Oh, wait a minute. One last thing. Some people say have a great day. I don't say have a great day. I say make it a great day.
This is true. It's in your power. Make it a great day. Make it a great day.
All right now. Peace.
Peace.